Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome to the How to Be podcast. That's the working title. I'm here in the studio, my house, with Turner Olson, who I've actually attempted a few podcast ventures in the past with, so there was nobody better to try to kick off a new one here. This may be nothing, it may be something, but hopefully, it'll be something just kind of fun to get some interesting people out on the airwaves and into the world, and people that I encounter with and inspire. Look, you know this about me, Turner. My name is Grant. I'm nobody that you need to be concerned with. I don't have an Instagram handle for you to follow. This is going to be what it is. And if you like the content, cool. But I've not done this because I feel like so many millennials are out there doing podcasts. Okay, look, you either have a podcast, you want to be a video game streamer, or you like a YouTube star.
Is that millennial or Gen Z?
Maybe both. Maybe it's just like, it's like the new gold rush or something. And that's not a reason to not do it. And I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, because there's a lot of great creators out there. But I need to stop using that as a reason to not put myself out there a little bit. So
I feel you. I've actually thought about this too. Even just starting like a little YouTube channel. I think, you kind of get in your head that the market is saturated or whatever, and you don't think you're good enough as maybe somebody who's been doing it for 5-10 years, and maybe you aren't, but maybe your starting point is better than their starting point. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And
to see yourself as somebody who has something to offer and something to say, I think is probably one of the most important things when it comes to content.
Yeah, it's weird to think about yourself in terms of market value.
Right.
It's like, if I wasn't me, would I tune in to watch me talk about XYZ? And you have to kind of have that out of body kind of perspective to
right.
Anyway. But this brings us to an interesting point, because it's like, how does one introduce the maiden voyage of a new podcast or a new whatever? I've noticed this new trend, and this is something that I've seen on several channels, where when they open up a show, they open up very, very big and bright. Like, I'm noticing things in the YouTube algorithms where it's like, the way they open up a show, or the thumbnails they use, that kind of green screen, kind of clip art,
right,
big words. But also when you open up a new show, they hit you with like the hello, or like the oh, welcome. And it's very like, there must be something to that scientifically that somebody read data on, that was like, you got to start big like that to really pull people in.
But maybe the difference is everybody's doing clickbaity thumbnails and loud intros, and maybe they need something where the content stands out on its own, and you just pontificate and talk for a very long time. And I think there may be a market for that. I don't know.
It's going to be the understated podcast. But yeah, we were just talking about Joe Rogan, and this is not Joe Rogan. I'm not Joe Rogan. I'm not. But it's interesting because I think the working title for this is just going to be How to Be, because I feel like there's a lot of content out there, schools, specialized things that teach people how to do things, but not a lot how to be things. And so I'm just going to grab interesting people that have an hour, that want to sit down and talk and just pick their brain a little bit. How did you get to where you are? What are the things that you're seeing in the world? What's your perspective? And some of the most interesting content is like that, like Rogan or like 60 Minutes or some of that kind of stuff. So it's just going to be a little bit free form. But thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me.
There's a lot of ways that I
hope I don't ruin your first podcast.
You will, probably. There's a lot of ways that I could kind of introduce you to the world, but it's not all that relevant to anybody but me. But there's a lot of funny stories I could tell. But your market value, I guess, as far as why people would come to you for expertise, would be like, what would you call that? Why
people gravitate towards me?
Like what is it about you that you think, like, if you were going to charge $5 for an admission ticket for people to come hear you talk, what would you talk about? Oh man,
that's a hard question to start off with. I don't know. It's kind of hard for me to, I guess, market myself, because I'm still in my mid to late 20s, and maybe I haven't like accomplished something great per se, but I do like value my own opinion and perspective. So I don't know. Why would you come and pay $5 for me? I'm going to flip it around, because I really have no answer for that question.
The reason that I chose you first is, well, first of all, you've been an inspiration to me, but you're going to be a thing. I see the water boiling, and I have an inside perspective because we're friends, but I think that from a real estate perspective, it's really I guess you could call it entrepreneur, ship, but also I mean philosophy maybe. And I think the title we're going to choose for this is just going to be hustle, because you're somebody that you have a lot of things synergizing, and I think it's about to pop for you. So I kind of want to start with the backstory on let's kind of keep it career kind of minded a little bit. What was your experience growing up in terms of your financially and kind of where you were at? I know that at various points in times things were pretty thin for you guys, and the discipline that you showed from a young age, Eagle Scout, ROTC, heavy in athletics, that kind of thing, and kind of how that launched you into kind of the into your college trajectory, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was blessed to have both parents that stayed together, thank the Lord. But we definitely went through some thin times. The 2008 market, like a lot of millennials, I guess my world, so to say, of comfortable Western life kind of came crashing down. We had to sell our house and move into a tiny little piece of like property that was family owned. And thank goodness we had that. Otherwise, we probably would have either been homeless or, living in a 1-bedroom apartment somewhere in Waynesville. But I could have had it much worse. But that did kind of, like when I went to high school, it kind of threw me into this mindset where like I had to figure out how to pay for college myself. And I wanted to avoid debt as much as I could. So I just started doing all the extracurricular activities I could. I grew up playing baseball. So obviously I wanted to stick with baseball, but I ran cross country to try to get better on resumes. I joined clubs so I could get tassels around my neck and, maybe look better on a college resume. And all through high school, I wanted to actually go to West Point because the poll there was, $450,000 of free education in exchange for military time. Ended up not going that route, but I ended up getting some really great scholarships that allowed me to go to Bryan. And then, I worked a few jobs throughout Bryan. Had 3 jobs my senior year, which kind of helped me like land a job at an insurance company in Chattanooga. But as far as like entrepreneurship and where like I want to go in the future, I had never really thought about work the way I think about it now. I kind of just thought like, you go to college and then you're almost like owed something and you're going to make way better money than if you didn't go to college. But throughout, I guess, my experiences working and having a few different jobs over the years, like I've realized that like value isn't determined necessarily by like your past credentials, but your current and future work ethic. So I don't know if that's like enough of a summary from where I grew up.
I had some other questions lined up in the middle of there that you kind of took farther in the timeline. But I mean, going back to some of that early stuff, I mean, was your work ethic formed by trying to escape from kind of the hard way, or is that just part of who you are? I mean, I don't want this to devolve into an Enneagram podcast because I'm not a master on that, but I know you are a 3, right? So that's somebody that's for people that are familiar with the Enneagram, it's a numbered
achiever,
1 through 5 or 1 through 9. I'm sorry, and it kind of helps you understand yourself a little bit better. And Turner lands at the 3 spot. That's a very driven, achieving individual. So is it that simple, or was it because you were trying to escape from kind of some of the struggles you saw your parents go through, or like how did that discipline and that drive form?
Man, that's a tough question. I mean, I would like to say I have this intrinsic like propensity towards working really hard, but the fact of the matter is like when I've been unhealthy in my life, like they say on the Enneagram, if you're a 3 and you're unhealthy, you digress to like the poor 9. And that did end up being like in my younger years, like a few summers of me just lounging around and sleeping until 1 o'clock and like feeling really poorly about myself because I wasn't working or like achieving. But I guess, I think a lot of your work ethic and motivation comes from your parents. And I did see like my dad work multiple jobs for, many years during the formative years of my life, just to keep things afloat. And so to say that didn't play a role in my work ethic would be doing him a disservice. My mom had to go out and get, some jobs when she hadn't worked for years. And so seeing that, I think that played a part. I think there's another part where in an unhealthy way, I wanted to avoid the pain of like not having money. And so I thought by like achieving and maybe trying to make more money, or like going to law school and becoming a lawyer so I could make, $150,000 a year, I think that was like a little bit of pain avoidance there. But I guess through those things, like through high school, like I remember I was so busy with extracurriculars and AP classes and stuff. Like I'd be up till like midnight doing homework, and I would get to the school at 6:30 in the morning, very little sleep. So I was exhausted. I remember I was taking an advanced algebra class, and I used to stand up and stand up in the back of the room and take notes because otherwise I would fall asleep. And I remember my teacher, like I didn't really think anything of it, and people would kind of look at me weird, but I was like actively trying to engage in that and do the best work that I could in that class because math wasn't necessarily my strong suit. And I remember it was kind of like a moment that, okay, wow, I really do work hard. When my teacher like gave me a shout out in front of the class, she's like, look at Turner. He's obviously very tired, but he's making an effort to engage with the curriculum. And if you need to stand up in class like he does, like that's a great example. So, it's a factor of all of those things. And that like brings me to my motivations now where, I want to maximize my time, my energy, and my efforts towards something that's, meaningful and provides a good living for my family. So I think maybe I'm a little more balanced in my work ethic now, where I work really hard, but maybe the intentions are maybe a little more pure than in high school.
We can't just brush over the thing that you mentioned about West Point, because that's a rare kind of experience. I mean, it's not like not everybody that I've met has passed up on a West Point commission, or I mean, you even had a like a letter of recommendation from your congressman. I think.
Heath Schuler.
And you were basically on the table ready to go to apply or to get accepted. Maybe you had applied. So walk us through that decision. And obviously if you were purely career motivated or purely money motivated, or that achiever thing of you was out of control, you would have gone that route. Instead you went to a Christian liberal arts school to just get a bachelor's degree and like live life as a civvy.
Yeah.
So I mean, like what happened there, and how hard was that decision for you?
Well, I think it was pretty difficult, wanting something for so many years. And like, I remember I did an ROTC camp at the Citadel, and it was an Air Force Junior ROTC, and there was 300 cadets there. And I got like outstanding cadet out of all 300 of those. And I like swept all the awards. And I remember there was some former instructors at the Air Force Academy, and they called my name up front and center, like pretty aggressively, like, I need, Master Sergeant Turner Olson, step up quickly here. And I stood up in front of all these cadets, and they said that my room and the bed, I had made the hospital corners, and I measured everything out, and I tied everything down with like safety pins that you couldn't see, and I slept on a desk for a week because I was maximizing my time where I didn't have to make the bed in the morning. I knew if I made it perfect one time that I could sleep on like a wooden desk and I wouldn't have to worry about that one thing. And so he said that was the best made bed he had ever seen in his 30 years at the Air Force Academy. So, and I had like commissioned officers in the Air Force, pushing me to go to the Air Force Academy there. They would pull me aside and be like, son, where do you want to go to school? I was 16. And I would tell them West Point, and that was mostly because of the history of West Point and the great men that had gone there, and they were pushing me towards the Air Force Academy. They were like, oh, you don't want to be a dumb Army guy. But I don't know. I guess senior year, like, I had just turned 18, and I started freaking out about it a little bit. And I started getting, like, a little better at baseball. And I was like, I can't enjoy these things anymore, and I'm basically signing over 12 years of my life at 18 years old. And I'd be 30 when I get out. And, at that time, like, we were more heavily involved in Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think there was part of me that, like, wanted to go over and fight, honestly. But there was that part of me at 18 that I was, like, a little worried about that, too.
It's a big decision to make at 18 years old.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. So, yeah, I mean, there was other factors, too. Like, I was getting closer with my high school friends, and kind of saw like a different way with college. I was like, well, maybe I can get some scholarships, and you know, I don't know. I became like less involved with ROTC. Like I was the corps commander senior year, but you know, the second half it was like mostly baseball. So yeah, there's like a lot of different decisions there, and you know, sometimes I don't regret not going to West Point because so many great things come out of Bryan. But when I'm maybe in a more unhealthy state, I think like, man, look at what all I'd be accomplishing there.
Hard to say where you might have
But I
been.
could be 6 feet under.
Yeah.
You know, you never know. So.
Or just cranky, miserable drill sergeant.
Yeah, and I was even talking with my dad a few months ago, and he was bringing up, you know, PTSD, and he was like, I think you would be right there, just because of my headspace and, you know, all that stuff. So, who knows? Maybe I couldn't have handled that. Like, I think I could have handled combat, possibly, but the ramifications and coming off the battlefield, like, maybe I wouldn't have. And I might not even be a Christian today if it weren't for going to Bryan.
Right.
So.
Hard to say. Well, it's always been a very interesting chapter to me in your life. So there's been a lot of changes kind of in your direction. You've done a lot of pivots, and so after the military thing, when I met you, you were interested in poli-sci and maybe even being a lawyer, and then that changed. You studied Greek. You got some biblical studies, but talk about your change from now you're leaving behind that dream of also being a lawyer. And what happened there?
Yeah, I think I began to see work a little bit differently. And again, it was probably a little bit of the unhealthiest side of me that was like, I could make a ton of money as a lawyer. And I could also maybe do something that was, you know, worthwhile, like maybe with constitutional law or something. And then I realized constitutional lawyers don't make any money. And then I also realized that I didn't want to work 90 to 100 hours a week in like a high-rise building, you know, filing other people's lawsuits. And I didn't want to go to law school, honestly. I think, you know, being a lawyer I could have handled, but I don't know if I could have handled law school. And everybody that I talked to that went to law school basically said, you know, you have to be prepared and want to go to law school in order to be a lawyer, obviously. And it's just 3 years of hell, honestly. And a lot of boring stuff, and it's extremely competitive. It's on like a bell curve. So I also don't think that would have been very good for my personality. And I thought, you know, there's other ways to make a good living and still be able to spend time with your family without selling your soul to a company that's, you know, going to think nothing of you in 10 years.
So what was your direction once you decided to drop that?
Whoever would give me a job. So I actually did some networking. I worked at the YMCA in Dayton, and I did some networking with a guy who said, you know, what are you doing after college? And I was like, I don't know, man.
What were your tell everybody what your certifications were at graduation in terms of major and minor?
Well, I did like the pre-law program, which was politics and government, and Bible minor, history minor, philosophy minor. So basically useless as far as like the business world goes.
Balance, let's just look at this as an equation. You could have traded. Is West Point 4 years?
West Point is 4 years. Yeah.
Okay, so in that 4 year period of time, you could have been probably receiving your first commission out of West Point.
Yeah.
Or from the law perspective, you would have been ready at that point to go to pre-law, or
I would have been going to law school.
You would have been ready for law school at that point.
But that's another 3 years of school.
Okay, and then you would have to pass the bar or whatever the.
Yeah.
So those are two things you passed up on, and instead you exit with a double minor in history and biblical studies and
philosophy,
a triple minor then, right? And then your major in politics and government. Okay. And then from that point, this is where I'm going to interject a little bit, because this was something that I think that was crucial to me. We took different paths to this point, but I was a communications student, and I wanted to get into the arts and filmmaking, and I couldn't bear the idea that I was just going to go work for like in the corporate America and just live a very normal life.
Right.
Jokes on me because I'm there now. But one thing I remember that you told me that kind of echoes in my brain was that, you know, I was like, Turner, like, man, you got all these things you could do. Like, you're really just going to go get a job in insurance, you know? And you said to me, yeah, because that's how. I think you said, I'm going to play the corporate game as long as I need it, and then I'm going to exit with I can. I'm going to exit when I can with the money that I've made, and then I'm going to use that to like be my own man and be free and invest that well. However you said it, and I think that's exactly what you've done. And so you graduated in 2015, it's 2020 now. So in a 5-year period, talk really quickly about kind of how your experience in corporate America was and what your philosophy is on that, because I think that's been very helpful to me.
I think I've seen all the ups and downs of corporate America and like what it has to offer. And I have no complaints. Like my company has been very good to me, and you know, even through coronavirus, like they've been very good to all their employees, and it's a great place to work. But I feel like my time there, as far as like my learning curve and you know, what I set out to accomplish there, has kind of tapped out. So like in the past few years, I've done a couple different jobs at the same company, and I've gained good resume experience. But to me, it doesn't matter as much because I kind of want to just trash my resume and start my own thing. But I had to get to where I wanted to go. So, you know, I had still a little bit of student loans. So I had like $12,000 that I wanted to pay off. My wife and I, we cash flowed our wedding, you know, paid off a car, and, you know, both have a couple pieces of property that we rent out one and live in the other. So that's oh gosh, I dropped my phone. Sorry. I think as far as like setting myself up to have an easier transition into entrepreneurship, a large company has allowed me to do that, to mitigate risk and to probably, hopefully, be more successful in starting my own endeavor where I don't have to worry about like monthly payments on debt. I don't have to worry about like sustaining a certain lifestyle because my wife has income right now. And hopefully it'll get me to where I'm going. But yeah, I mean, I've been rejected for jobs at my company. I've almost gotten into some great programs that would have been like seal the deal for me to like stay at the company. So I think all those things have kind of led me to this moment, hopefully going into real estate, you know, starting my own like little flipping business and all that. I don't know. Does that answer the last 5 years?
Yeah. I mean, I think so. Your point about when you're 22 and you're graduating from, you know, college, as a lot of people are, you know, you probably have debt. Not everybody has a situation, a lot, you know, but a lot of us have debt coming out of that. And then so even if you graduate, let's say you get a business degree and you're ready to roll and you think that you're, you know, the next genius, and you may be, but in terms of risk management, you know, like you're sitting on all that debt, you know, are you just going to go into business and you have to pay for your own insurance and your own benefits and things like this, and then maybe you want to get married and that all that cost, like it's almost backbreaking to try to think about investing even a modest amount of money into a business venture without kind of taking care of that stuff first, learning some things about life, how to pay taxes and how to, you know, be a grown up, and then you know, get your ducks in a row and then take your shot at that point. So the real estate thing is really kind of what I'm trying to hone in on here, because that's what you're doing now, and I think that your perspectives on this is going to kind of be the main thrust of the show. So it kind of all started with this. When we graduated college, there was a few months kind of in the interim when we all moved home and stuff and tried to figure it out. I remember you were applying for like Best Buy and things like that before you got the insurance job, but eventually you got it in Chattanooga there, and then you had an opportunity to get a house. You partnered with your parents on it, right? Which is an awesome thing, because if people are, depending upon what your situation is with your parents, it may not be always recommended, but if they're reasonable people, there's a lot that can be accomplished together. So you did that, and then you rented out that house that you were living in and renovating while renting it out to a couple of buddies to help you pay down that mortgage, right?
Right.
So walk me through kind of the decision to look at property and that as setting yourself up for the future, because you were thinking long term even then. I think 5-10 years, you had a vision at that age.
Yeah, I think I don't necessarily think there's like this number that I have to make in my head as far as to like live the lifestyle that like I want to live. But I think lowering your overhead costs, just like in business, you know, if your overhead is lower, then potentially your profit can be higher. So like lowering overhead for me in my personal life was like, you know, renting out the house. I paid, you know, so much money up front to partner with my parents and, you know, pay for the renovations and do the work myself. But the payoff was, you know, you guys got to live in a place that was cheap downtown. but combined, you were paying the mortgage. So I was essentially living rent-free, making a decent salary at a big company.
While building equity in the house. While,
paying off my debt, and then, like, saving up for wedding and, whatever else that life had to throw. But, yeah, I was thinking it was going to be later on, like 5-10 years down the road. And I didn't realize that the path to homeownership was a lot more simple than I had originally realized, a lot more affordable than I had realized. And then also, like, a $600-700 mortgage is cheaper than 2-3 bedroom. We were paying like $1,200 or $1,300 in an area I didn't want to live. So yeah, that's kind of why I like jumped at that opportunity. I was kind of hesitant at first when my parents approached me, but it ended up being a really good thing, and I think it ended up being a good thing for like you and Alex, as well as like some of the guys that live there.
Did you have money to contribute to the down payment, or was the agreement you're going to do a lot of the work?
Wow, getting into the nitty gritty.
Well, I mean, don't have to get specific, but I mean, for people to make this relevant for them, they may not all have stacks for their parents to be like, hey, let's go in on something.
Right.
So you got to use what you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I probably would have looked into first-time home buyer programs, but I didn't really understand all that going down. So I was like, I need 20% down. And my parents had offered to put 20% down. But the idea was to find something that was move-in ready, which we did. And, everything was in my name. And I contributed the same amount in renovations. Mm-hmm. So I was vested in the house.
And you were,
so the money that I've put into the house, like we're more than going to get out, because it's up the value of the house, like when we eventually sell it. So like the idea now is to like pay, like they're still vested in my house, but my wife and I live there, and obviously pay the mortgage, and it's our house. So when we liquidate it one day, we'll get our certain percentages that we've invested in, and then but what we're probably going to do is probably try to pay off the house, like each of us 50-50. So we're 50-50 partners, and then we'll probably rent it out for a few years before we end up liquidating. And we're just going to kind of go where the market takes us. I mean, I think there's a nationwide housing shortage right now. So I'm like, why would I ever sell one of my houses? But I mean, my parents might need that money for different investments later down the road. So it's all kind of fluid and always changing.
Mm-hmm. And having the house in your name, it simplifies things, but I think another way to look at it as part of the negotiations of a partnership, even with your parents, is that that's you taking the liability.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And that's something. That's not nothing. Because, I mean, somebody who's getting close to retirement, 50, 60 years old, they may not want to put their name, kind of on the line for something. Right. Whereas if something would go wrong, you're young enough that you can recover from something like that. Somebody's retired, it could mess up their credit, what I mean? So I think that being willing to say, hey, let me do a lot of the work, let me take on the liability, that's something that can kind of help supplant a big down payment.
Yeah, and my dad and I had been talking for a long time about starting a business together. And originally it was like, hey, let's start flipping houses. A friend in California who did some like historic flips, super cool stuff. That was like really inspiring when we went out there, and we're like, hey, we could do that in Chattanooga. So like I had enough to put down on like a decent house, like by myself. But it kind of took the edging of my parents, like, hey, we could get involved with this too. And we have that kind of relationship. And since we want to be in business together anyway, this was kind of like a first step. So maybe like liquidate in a few years, and then we have enough to like pay cash for, a flip or a rental or something like that. And I don't know, through that whole process, I began to kind of understand the power of real estate. And then even real estate as a career, like as a licensed agent, like there's so much you can do to meet the needs of your like financial life, I guess. Like you can work more and make more money, or you can work less and not make as much money, but you have more time. You can do some investing. There's just a lot of opportunities that come up with it. So yeah, it's not like for everybody, that situation. But there's like the mutual trust there, and we're just upfront with everything, and we have spreadsheets breaking down costs, and there's no like selfishness there. Right. And we always have to check ourselves when it comes to money, because nothing can tear a family apart quicker than money arguments.
$100 to ruin a friendship.
Exactly. Which is why I don't loan money out to people.
Only give, right?
Only give, like Dave Ramsey says. Yeah.
So I think the way that you've kind of gone about attacking the real estate thing is pretty cool too, because I mean it is whatever you want it to be. There's a lot of different ways you can kind of get into that industry, but the way that you've done it specifically is a lot of DIY, a lot of saving costs by doing things yourself, sweating, putting on your paint jeans, and I've seen a lot of that. But then also you're working on getting your licensing. Your dad had an opportunity or the time or availability to go ahead and start that process ahead of you, so he's gotten involved. So then by the time this is over, how's it going to look? You guys are going to have your own property company. You're both going to be licensed agents, as far as I understand, right? Yeah. And then you're going to have I want to talk a little bit more about specifically TKO Properties, which is the company name. Right. And kind of all the different avenues, from the flipping side to the holding company that's going to be renting, to you guys as agents for other people, the video thing, all of it. Like give kind of the dream for the company.
Yeah, I mean, without revealing my dirty secrets, and that's kind of a joke because, I mean, there's no really dirty secrets in real estate. It's like, it kind of boils down to hard work. Like, everybody has the idea, but not everybody has the execution. So my eventual idea with my dad is to, have a real estate company where, people can come to us to list their house, to buy their house. We have a couple buyer's agents under us, a couple assistants that we're paying like good money, so they're making a good living for their family. They like what they do for a living. They're helping other people. They're in an industry that they're passionate about. So that's like the eventual dream for the traditional real estate part. Like, Joe Schmo takes you out to go look at your house and helps you buy a house and helps line up the financing and, puts you in touch with the right people for inspections and repairs and all that stuff. From the listing side to where it's like, hey, if you need to sell your house, right there, boom, done. My eventual goal, and it's going to be different than my dad because I'm not 10 years away from retirement. My dad probably is 10 years away from retirement. So I would love to have like a property manager wing of that manages people's rentals, that manages our own personal rentals. And then I'd also like to have a media portion that educates people on real estate, that videos houses for other agents so it helps them out, that takes the pictures for other agents, that can create branding and help other agents so they can help other people too. So, yeah, I mean, real estate as a career can obviously look different for other people, but I guess like the final step in most people's real estate career is the education aspect, as far as, like coaching other people and helping other people and getting paid for your expertise instead of just your time for listing properties or whatever. So. And
the TKO thing works on a few levels because it's Turner and Kurt Olson, right?
Yeah.
But also you've got a new hobby recently.
If you call 2 years semi-recently.
So let's talk about that and kind of how that fighting kind of, association with the TKO kind of works on two levels there.
Yeah, I mean, like, technical knockout or total knockout, like whatever you want to say. Knocking out the competition. Turner Curtles and Properties. Right. But yeah, I'm pretty into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, more specifically Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. Shout out to my friend Jeremy Rarden for getting me involved in that. But yeah, that's kind of taken over my hobby life the past couple of years. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of incorporate something that I'm passionate about, like into a company name that is also kind of like, playful. So it's really nice because my dad and I have the same vision for the company, and that's like, there's these real estate agents that take themselves way, way, way too seriously, and they think like they're just the hot stuff. And we kind of want to make fun of that and just have fun with it. And I think when people see like other people being real and that they're on their side, but that they're also an expert but not a tool, I think that's where like there's high customer satisfaction. So I don't know, that's just kind of like a little thing. Like I don't think that common person would necessarily think like, oh, they're into jiu-jitsu or Turner's into jiu-jitsu with TKO Properties. But it is kind of like a fun thing if you get to know me.
So the jiu-jitsu thing, talk about that a little bit, because that's a whole it's a rising movement, but I still feel like one that's a little bit underappreciated and not necessarily. Would you call it mainstream yet? I mean,
Well, I mean, sometimes like when you get into something, and I think you know this, like you're into. I'm gonna reveal your dirty laundry, but you're into like trading sports cards right
Sure.
now. And you probably do a lot of research on it. You're talking to people in the industry. You're like looking on eBay for cards, and you're seeing people swipe up deals.
so it
And you're
seems-
like, everybody knows the
right, it
secret,
seems
right?
Like it's all around you.
Still really niche,
Yeah.
and not many people do it. So I think there's probably like 100 guys and women at my gym, so 100 in total, in Chattanooga. And there's a couple BJJ places, but as far as Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, about 100 people. There's like, 300,000 people in Chattanooga? So you think everybody knows it, and you think, well, everybody watches the UFC or at least knows what the UFC is. But then I even think of myself 2.5 years ago, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll try Krav Maga.
Yeah.
And I didn't really think anything of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then you go, and then you're like, wow, everybody must know about this. But, I mean, that's not really true. And I kind of get strange looks because people don't know what it is. So people, they kind of have that idea of like, oh, are you a yellow belt in Taekwondo and, air kicking bags or whatever? And that's not it at all, but it is kind of funny. And my dad makes fun of me and tells people that I do karate.
Right.
So.
It's got kind of an exotic,
Nothing wrong with it, but it's just like,
and, yeah, like people don't necessarily know, like if unless you've experienced it or you're familiar, you're a fan of UFC or something. I don't know that it's not immediately clear. Like, what are you talking about when you say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
right.
But how has that kind of helped you personally in kind of fostering discipline and kind of just doing hard things, struggling, sweating, wrestling, kind of that, like what has that done philosophically or kind of just for you on a personal level? Because everybody that I know that's done it is better for it.
Right. I think probably my biggest takeaway from doing jiu-jitsu the past 2 years has been the realization that I'm not special. And I have this talk a lot with some of my closer jiu-jitsu friends, like our common friend Nick Levine. Like, you realize you're not special. And knowing somebody like our friend Nick, he's freaking stacked. He's a great athlete. And he looks like he belongs in the most military branches of the military that ever militarized. Yeah. Like, he's just that guy. He looks like a younger Jocko. And you look at these freaking guys and you're like, you are special. Jocko is special. But he wasn't special at one point. But it's been years of like hard work, determination, and failure that have made him the man he is, and that have made him like a physical specimen, and his brain too. So like Nick is special now, but it's because he never saw himself as special when he started going to jiu-jitsu. So you have to put your ego at the door. Leave it at the door. And it sounds so cliche if you've ever gone to a jiu-jitsu gym, the right jiu-jitsu gym, because there can be a lot of ego. It's not about winning. It's about getting better and learning to protect yourself and protect other people in a safe manner. It's called the gentle art. Mm-hmm. But it's the closest thing to magic I've ever experienced. And, I've rolled with guys who are small guys, like 140, 145 pounds. And I'm a small guy too, but I was like, oh man, I work out all the time. Like, I can bench 225. Like, I'll be fine. And I get absolutely destroyed. In the softest manner. And it's mind-blowing to me because I go, wow, I'm not special. And this guy wasn't special either. He just showed up.
What would be the appropriate response if you let's say you have no training, you're just like, you think you're a tough guy, and you walk into a gym off the street and somebody with a black belt on their waist comes at you and you overcome them, tap them out, beat them up, whatever. What would be the appropriate response?
For me, if I tapped out a black belt?
Like, you have no training, you go in there and you win.
I mean, I would say your martial art is BS because you can't back it up.
You leave right now.
Yeah.
Like you, but it's by getting tapped out by somebody half your size that you're like, wait a minute, let me humble myself. Can you teach me? And that's kind of what I think jiu-jitsu. It starts you off on that very humble.
And there were a lot of growing pains with like the Gracie challenges in the 90s. And so that was kind of the thing was, the Bruce Lee, say what you will about martial arts. I think traditional martial arts can be great and can make people better people. Does it make you a better fighter? I don't know. Up for debate. I think like Muay Thai, yeah. Wrestling, yeah. Jiu-Jitsu, yeah. Other stuff, maybe there's aspects that make you a better fighter. But the unique thing about jiu-jitsu was there was no 1-inch punch. There was no pressure point that collapsed somebody. You were just better because you practiced more and you learned the technique and you didn't try to like out-muscle somebody. So you can go on YouTube and you can look at the old Gracie Challenge matches of the 90s where these guys try to knock out these jiu-jitsu guys and get choked out. And it's rough and it's brutal. And my instructor talks about that all the time. Like people used to walk in the door who had black belts in like judo or like another art, and they would get tapped out by like freaking white belts in jiu-jitsu in the 90s. So that was kind of the thing was like you got the reputation that jiu-jitsu was like the tough, hard to beat martial art because they challenged everybody. They weren't afraid of anybody. Hickson Gracie would fight anybody on the beach, shirtless. And it doesn't mean you don't get roughed up a little. Like sometimes I get a black eye or whatever. But if you can't beat me, then I win. If you can't knock me out at 250 pounds and choke me out, I might not be able to like break your arm, or maybe I will, then I win. So it's a completely different mindset.
Something else I think it brings to the table too is that it's highly repeatable because it goes back to that gentle thing. It may be uncomfortable, but it doesn't damage. It can, but being tapped out, without actually going out, stretched, kind of pinched, whatever, like in certain ways, that's not as damaging as going to a boxing ring and getting pounded repeatedly. Like, yeah. And you can practice this art into your advanced years. And it's repeatable day in, day out. You don't have to have 6 months of recovery after a bout, or whatever.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of studies on like boxing, I think. And what's the big conversation in the NFL? What, CET?
Yeah, the concussion thing.
Yeah. And people like Antonio Brown, like he's lost his freaking mind because he's taken so many hits to the head. And that happens with boxers too. So you can only go so hard for so long with other martial arts. With jiu-jitsu, you can go hard and you have somebody who's trying to freaking choke you out or break your arm or whatever, and the defense to that, and you can go 100% continuously over a long period of time without like damaging your body or like losing your mind because you've gotten hit by so many bricks. So yeah, I think that's what makes it unique is like you can put yourself in those situations like, hey, get on my back and try to choke me out. And when the worst thing that happens is like somebody starts choking you, you just tap out.
Right. And if something bad would happen to you on the street, I think the thing that I admire the most about it is that it's like you don't have to brutalize somebody's face just because they got drunk and got a little crazy. Like to control the situation, you can control them, control the situation, get out of there without anybody's life being long-term altered or getting sued, hopefully. Or anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And especially in this day and age, like if you have your concealed carry or like a knife or something like that, like is that really a better option than maybe controlling somebody and bringing them to the ground? It depends on the situation, but I would rather be able to control somebody and save their life and not break their face and knock their teeth out and hit them in the head and possibly kill them. Just put them twisting in arm control, take their back, tell them to calm down until they finally give up. And they eat a piece of humble pie and they realize that you beat them or until the police come.
But then everybody gets to go home and you don't have to go to the hospital, hopefully.
Hopefully.
But it can escalate to that point if you have to take somebody out of a situation,
Yeah, it can.
Harmless, to use a military term. So yeah, I think that's all very cool, Turner. You got a lot of things that are kind of synergizing for really just self-betterment. And I don't know, do you have any kind of closing remarks on, this is your life, not everybody has the same interests and hobbies, but just kind of your attitudes on work ethic, and kind of the bigger picture of what life's about, I think is something that I've always respected and been benefited by. So, for people who are kind of struggling with working their 9-to-5 job or who feel like they're, the whole world's shut down with coronavirus right now. It's like, how do you stay active and how do you not just become pathetic kind of day in, day out, just waiting for the world to start moving again? Do you have any kind of closing encouragement for for anybody right now in this bummer of a 2020?
I think there's a lot of guys that would say it better than I can, and I'll listen to a lot of those guys. But you can look them up: David Goggins, Jocko Willink, Gary Vee. Even there's a lot of guys that are very inspirational, and they tell you to get after it, and they scream in the camera, they point in the camera, and they say like, you gotta believe in yourself and you gotta do it. And yeah, that's true, for sure. But I really didn't get it for a long time until more recently, that it's like a mental shift. Success is, you have to define what success is to you. It's not necessarily like an objective measurement, but to be the best person that you can be, Jocko talks about this, and he calls it the eminent human being. And he says, and he uses an example, and you can look it up online, and I'm going to butcher it, but he basically says like the Marine Corps handbook has a definition of the eminent Marine, like a level 5 on 1 to 5 scale. And you're embodying the spirit of the Marine Corps. You're embodying what it means to go above and beyond to be the best Marine that you can be. And I think when you start comparing yourself to other people, that's detrimental. I think your biggest competition should be you looking at you in the mirror. And, I'm a big believer in discipline equals freedom, so just get out there and do it. You want a podcast? Get out there and podcast. There's nothing stopping you. We live in an amazing society that other people don't care about your success. They might be jealous if they don't put in the work, but they don't care. I don't care if you become a successful podcaster. I don't care if you become a business executive. I literally don't care. So, what's stopping you? There aren't people actively trying to stop you from being successful just because they have so much time on their hands that they just want to see the world burn. That's ludicrous. So, yeah, I mean, your biggest competition is you in the mirror. Be disciplined, and have some kind of a purpose, a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to do hard things, to make yourself uncomfortable. I've been doing half a Murph every day, besides the past couple days in Greenville.
What a Murph is.
A Murph is the Memorial Day workout that's kind of become like the CrossFit thing. But what I've been doing every day has been 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, 200 squats, and a mile run. So I do it every day on my lunch break. And it sucks, dude. And I'm sore, and I've gotten tennis elbow from it. But pushing through that makes you a better person. It's going to harden your body. And it's going to make you more disciplined in your mind. So do stuff that's outside of your comfort zone. Don't just seek comfort. I think we live in a very fortunate society that you can go through most of your life being soft and comfortable, but that shouldn't be our ultimate quest, because you're not going to reach your goals. You're not going to reach your dreams. You're not going to help people to the best of your ability if you just follow the mediocre path. And for some, the mediocre path looks different. For some, the successful path looks different. I'm not saying in any way, shape, or form that I would live a terrible life if I stayed at my Fortune 500 company my whole life. That may be the great path for other people, but if you feel a calling in your life to do something more and not just settle for what has been given to you, then I think maybe our society as a whole might be a little better.
Mm-hmm. And that personal responsibility element of it, I think, is kind of key.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you mentioned, the people that kind of get jealous of your success and stuff. I mean, I think a lot of that is because they're playing with the wrong, they're using the wrong metric to measure themselves with other people rather than themselves. So thank you for that, man. I think maybe this episode's better called, instead of how to be the hustle or how to be a hustler, it should be how to be more, how to be kind of that eminent you.
Yeah.
Whatever you are. But thank you for everything you're doing, man, in life, and I'm really excited. It's like I say, I think that your stock is definitely going to be rising here pretty soon, and people are going to be coming to you more for this kind of thing as they get to know you. So, best of luck. What kind of Instagram, kind of interwebs things can you put out there for people to reach out to you?
Man, if I'm even worth following, if you want to follow me, T Olson, OLSON _22. You can probably find me on YouTube. Just type in my name too, but. Follow this guy for sure if you're an organic viewer. Like and subscribe.
Yeah, and of course TKO Properties. You guys have a website or anything up for that yet?
Yeah, we haven't officially launched this TKO Properties, but probably by the time this episode airs, we're thinking around August 1st, we'll have everything up and running. But if you need anything, just reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on here too.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe for the 100th episode.
100th episode special.
Let's just get the 10. I'll be glad if we get the 10. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and tune in for the next one.